for joining me this morning. Glad to see you all here on this rainy day. All right. How many shareholders do we have in the audience? All right. Excellent. All right. You've done very well in the past year, haven't you? So let's get on with the presentation. Our forward-looking statement. Let's talk briefly about our business model because we do have a very unique business model. We take a three-pronged approach to our business model. The first leg of the business model is royalty generation. So this is very unique to the sector. So our primary vehicle for growing our royalty portfolio is royalty generation. And by royalty generation, what we do is we utilize prospect generation, and then once we sell that or partner that property off, we always hold back a royalty on that. And we've been doing that for 17 years now. We were first publicly traded in December of 2013. We also augment our organically derived royalty portfolio with royalty acquisitions when we can find those at favorable pricing valuations, but that's becoming increasingly more difficult to do. And then the last part of our three-pronged approach to the business is strategic investment. So if we find a company with a project that we think is grossly under-recognized in the market and yet stands a considerable chance of a very outsized return, we may invest directly into that company. A great example of that would be the massive Melmish gold-copper discovery in Far East Russia that we became involved in about 8.5 years ago. Over the course of 7 of those years, we invested $13 million into that project, and then about 1.5 years ago, we were able to help facilitate the sale of that property, and our take on that, from the sale of that property was $90 million. So that's has provided us with a lot of operating capital. Right now, we've got about $74 million in the treasury and several $million in equity investments. These are areas of interest around the world. We're very active in Arizona looking for big copper, very active in Nevada where, of course, we're looking for gold. Very active in Scandinavia, specifically Norway and Sweden for a broad spectrum of commodities, including copper, gold, silver, base metals, and nickel, cobalt, and platinum group elements. And then we're active in Turkey. Actually, we're not picking up any new ground there. It's become a bit of a difficult jurisdiction, but all of our properties there are in the hands of our capable Turkish partners. And then we have a big royalty on the Timok project in Serbia that Zijin Mining is advancing right now, and we'll take a little bit closer look at that in a slide coming up. This is our value pyramid here. So as we generate exploration properties and add value to those by performing basic, inexpensive exploration, surface or near-surface exploration, i.e. we do not do any drilling or very limited drilling. We may drill a little bit on one property a year, but that's about it. So drilling's very expensive. We look for our partners to do that. So we do basic, inexpensive explorations on the properties, add value to those, entice another company to come in to buy or partner that property, and then we receive payments from them going forward, and we hold back a royalty on that property. So everything in the dark blue portion of the pyramid at the bottom there is in the portfolio right now and is available for partnership. Once it is partnered off, it goes up into the medium blue portion of the pyramid, and then from that point on up, we're no longer writing any checks on that property. Our partners are doing that. So we really specialize in spending other people's money. And actually, I have a wife who subscribes to the same business model. But this just gives you an idea of how our commodity focus is divided up. Our wheelhouse is really copper and gold, but we embrace a number of other metallic opportunities out there, polymetallics, lead, zinc, silver, battery metals, and so on. About 44% of our properties are available for partnership. About 50% of those are in royalty status, and so on. And then you can see how we're divided up geographically. Moving on to our partners around the world, you can see that we're in bed with some of the largest mining houses in the world, including Newmont, Hudbay, Anglo American, Rio Tinto, South 32, and Zijin Mining, along with some mid-tiers and a number of Canadian juniors. All right, let's take a look at our ownership. So our top ownership position is held by Paul Stevens out of San Francisco. He's a hyper-successful investor. He's the gentleman that took Apple and Cisco public, so he's a very shrewd investor and venture capitalist. Sprott Global, it's actually Sprott Inc. out of Toronto, owns about 9.2% of us, so that's in their funds there. And then Rick Rule at Sprott Global out of California, and held in his partnerships and client accounts can be attributed to about another 25% of our ownership. And then EMX management directors and shareholders, and employees, about 15%. And I will add to that David Cole, the founder and CEO of the company, holds about 2.4 million shares, and that in 2019, David bought 646,000 shares of EMX stock. And the key thing to remember there is CEOs will sell shares in their own company for a broad spectrum of reason, but they only buy shares in their company for one reason, okay? Because he knows where the company is going, and he's voted with his share ownership. I've also bought a lot of shares myself. Then Newmont owns about 6% of us, 9 Point out of Toronto, Antofagasta, the big copper producer out of Chile, and U.S. Global Investors, Frank Holmes Group, run by Ralph Aldis, is the fund manager there, owns 1.1 million shares of us. And then Adrian Day Asset Management out of Annapolis, Maryland, holds about 2.6%. All right, moving on to the Carlin Trend in Nevada. This is our biggest single royalty, called the Leeville Royalty. The Leeville Royalty incorporates portions of the Leeville, Turf, and Carlin East mines. Since we acquired this property, the royalty, I should say, in August of 2012, this has provided us with about $13.5 million in royalty revenue. Also, of late, it was disclosed in an analyst tour and some documents that are available online that the Barrick Newmont Gold Venture has recognized about 10 million ounces of additional mineralization that is squarely on our royalty footprint. Now, that is not a compliant resource. They use some language that we had never seen before called drill indicated possible resource or something like that. So that's their language, not ours. But things are looking very good there. Moving on to Turkey, the Balya royalty, if you look in sort of the northeast quadrant there, that's our royalty property there. We have a 4% net smelter return on that. That has been a modest level of production for the past couple of years, but we were able to facilitate the change of the ownership of that property to the folks that operate the mine to the southwest there, ESON. They have a 5,000 ton per day mill there, and they will be advancing our portion, the royalty footprint there, into a much higher level of production. We think that'll probably provide us with $1 to $3 million in cash flow going forward. That'll be a year or two before they get that going, because they're going to have to do some infrastructure development on that side, but that's going to turn into a very nice ATM for us. Moving on to Serbia quickly, not a lot of people realize this. We have a 0.5% royalty on the Timok deposit. I think most people understand that are familiar with the deposit that it is a large deposit, but I don't think most people understand the magnitude of the scale of that deposit. Timok will be the next Grossberg or the next Bingham Canyon. They will be mining this in excess of 100 years. We've had analysts take a look at the PEA that was generated by the previous owner, Nevsun, and they've ground through the numbers, and they think that this thing will create between $500 million and $1 billion USD life of mine for EMX. So this is going to be a company maker for us, so this is certainly something to keep your eyes on. And that's all I've got time for. I'm located over in the 400 aisle in space number 416, so stop by and see me. Thank you so much for your time.